Welcome back to the Everyday Innovation Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Frank Elda, a writer, marketer, and strategist sharing resources and tools for smart creatives to build your freedom. Of course, I love all topics that Frank covers, and as a fellow resource builder for creator entrepreneurs in the community, I knew I had to have him on. So, welcome, Frank. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm looking forward to just having a fun conversation with you about building your freedom, about building a little bit in public, the intersection of creativity and tech. That would be a really fun conversation to have with you today. But if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to start with a couple warm-up questions. Does that work for you?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really excited also to participate and really honored to be invited in your podcast. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs and creators, especially if you're looking over on Twitter and seeing what everybody's up to, we're always learning something. We're always reading something new. Is there something that you're into right now or you're learning right now?
Yeah, well, particularly, well, this week, but I started a bit earlier. I'm diving into AI for content writing. So I'm participating with a community of writers to a sprint to, it's a bit crazy, but the idea is to produce 50 blog posts this week. So in 7 days.
Wow. And so what is the sentiment, especially for writers with AI? Because I know I'm sure it's very mixed between people who were maybe a bit resistant at first because they're seeing probably the AI writing everywhere. And you're like, I don't even know if this is a good thing or not.
There are different way of reacting to that. Some people are just scared that they will take over their job, let's say, the writer, and AI will take over what they do. Others overlook that and say, yeah, that's crap, and we don't care about it. Don't even bother wondering about what AI does. And there are others that say, wow, that's a wonderful tool that will help me to be faster, but also better. So that's the idea of the community I joined, led by Jacob Macmillan, maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I know who
Writer.
that is. So I'm going to make a note
Um,
for everyone who's listening so that I can make
so
sure
it's a
to put that in the show
interesting
notes. So if you're
community.
interested.
I just joined 2 weeks ago. The main idea of the community is to leverage AI to produce better quality contents, not to do average content faster, which is
Right,
also a possibility and what most of the people will do.
right.
So yeah, that's a fear that some people say, and they criticize a lot writing tools because indeed you can produce content very quickly. You can mass
Right,
produce content now
right.
at quite a high level, I would say, of quality. It's much, much better than before. I've been playing, I think, last almost 2 years, I've been playing from time to time with AI tools like that. I was curious. Most of the time, it was really bad in terms of writing. The only
Yeah.
thing that was good to me was to brainstorm. So
Hmm.
more on the creative aspect of writing, to brainstorm copywriting for, let's say, persuasive writing. It was already interesting,
So for
but
maybe
not
for
so much.
websites or having a little tagline or it pulling out
Yeah,
maybe a hook for you, right?
yeah, exactly. Or if you're stuck with your writing and you need more ideas, it can be a way to fight this famous writer's block. Um,
Well, I think we should dig into that a little bit further down in the conversation when we talk about that intersection
this
of
was
tech and creativity. I feel like
yeah
we definitely have similar feelings on how it can be used in your process.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this was already there, but of course, recently we all know that there's been like a tsunami of AI tools, and yeah, well, ChatGPT was the one that really exploded this use. Well, it was already there, so but well, it's how trends come. Sometimes something goes viral and everyone talks about it. Well, it was already there in different ways, but the thing that changes a lot the quality of writing. With the latest algorithms, you can produce content which is quite decently or even well written, played quite a lot these last 2 weeks in particular, and you can even produce fiction. I try to, well, write, generate, not write, a short novel just to have
Okay.
fun and trying some prompts, and the result is really good. I was very surprised. I can't even write like that. I'm not such as a good writer. So especially for fiction, I have no experience in that. Um,
Well, it's amazing because
so
it's
it's
probably a
very
way
interesting.
to expand your the way that you might write or might give you inspiration to write in some new spaces if it's not
Yeah.
necessarily your forte. If you're more into copywriting or you're more into fiction writing, you can use it to expand your repertoire maybe a little bit.
No, exactly. It was really a discovery because I never imagined producing some fiction at some point, or just sometimes thinking, oh yeah, I would like to, but it's really totally out of my possibilities. But this showed me that, yeah, why not? I could use that as a guide to express myself in a genre which is totally outside, yeah, of my usual type of writing. I come from very far because I'm mostly doing academic writing. I'm a scientist.
And
Fiction writing
very
is
yeah, very
quite
different.
far from that. Even writing online blog posts is already quite a stretch. It's a big leap. So it's still something I'm learning, but it was already something very different. So, so fiction is, yeah, another step. But
That's so
this just, yeah, it's a good example, very recent example for me, how technology and AI in particular, in this case, can expand your creativity and help you to, yeah, to reach new horizons. So now I can see projects of fiction writing, which was absolutely not in my mind before, like a week ago. So
I
that's
love
it's
that.
crazy.
I love that, and I think that's, definitely a way that you can use so you're in this group, you're producing and trying new ways of using AI in your writing, and what's the main goal of this course? Is it to I know you were saying it's to expand your creativity, so what are some of the things that you all are doing to expand that?
So, well, I'm quite new, and I think the direction will change over time. I'm not sure where it goes, but the idea to explore, in particular, the use of AI to become better writers, whatever
Yeah.
genre we want to thrive in. It's mostly
Oh, and that
what
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
it's mostly for. I think, yeah, most of us are more blog writers, I would say, or copywriters. So it's more on the business side, but not only. Jacob himself was interested in writing fiction for years and years. He's a big fan of science fiction and fantasy.
Mhm.
And so he has projects like that, also children books. And yeah. So I think there will be also a bit of fiction, probably. But the idea is, yeah, to master the tools and to also test in real projects. So that's what we are doing this week. How this can help us also to achieve business goals. So the idea is to this week, well, in my case, I'm creating brand new websites and to use AI to produce more content faster and then to iterate on that to get, yeah, higher quality content and to get people coming to a website using SEO. So it's really more, yeah, well, business and also education, because good content is educational and entertaining if you can. Not everyone, but
Yeah, no, of course.
with different ways of doing things, we will probably use different tools and
Right.
how it works. Yeah, in different niches, I think it will be very interesting because we are, yeah, in quite different aspects of the online world.
I love that. So actually, I was just shuffling these cards and
Yeah.
I something that came up because I was just going to pick ahead of time our card that was chosen by fate. And I thought this is a really great you were just mentioning kind of these creative outlets and I've seen you show that you're very passionate about many things. So The question is, what thoughts or ideas fill you with passion? So going from this AI thing to you're talking about niches and things that you're good at, but then there's also things that you're really passionate or interested about. What are some things that kind of excite you or fill you with passion?
Well, science, because also it's my vocation, let's say. I've been
Right.
in science for a long time, mostly biology and physics. Well, I'm a
Yeah.
physicist, but working on biological questions. Mm,
Nice.
But yeah, I've been interested in also cosmology and many things, but mostly biology for, let's say, 2 decades.
Wow.
But
Wow.
from the point of view of physicist, so I clearly don't see things as a biologist. I can see difference is still there
Right.
even after years. And I'm even in this activity, let's say, I'm merging different fields. So I'm already, say, multipassionate.
You're already
Yes,
making a hybrid.
exactly. So every day I'm also learning new things, developing new skills that I combine to, yeah, to make my own little thing, like unique perspective on a project, a problem, and try to answer with this particular skill set, let's say, also perspective. So also music. I've been doing music for a long time. So that's also
So
a
have
big part.
I grew up as a musician. I thought that was going to be my profession, and then I went in a
Yeah.
different direction. Yeah. So
Okay.
what as a musician, what do you play instruments? Do you write music?
Yeah, I play mostly the guitar, also
Nice.
the piano. I don't take much time to really write, but sometimes I create a new like song or things like that. Latest thing I've been doing was discovering ambient music and creating a few pieces of music. Very amateur, nothing very interesting, I guess, but it was interesting to discover that. Lately, I haven't done much. I should say, quite busy trying to build a business, doing science, having babies. So
Yes, that's another thing we have in common
that's
is having you have a new baby as well, right?
yeah, she's 8 months old,
Yes,
like
so
yesterday.
mine is about it's almost 7 months. So
Okay.
we're
Oh,
close in
almost, yeah.
we're close in time. We're in that area where it's still a little bit hard to schedule. I know even
Yeah.
for us trying to schedule, you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, yeah, let's see what's going on, what the baby's doing," right? And you have 3 other kids too, right?
Yes, yeah. Quite
So it's a whole that's a passion area in and of itself. I think it's not talked about enough, just
exactly.
having
And that's why I'm starting a website focused on helping parents with young babies.
That's so
And
exciting.
yeah, and just starting with that, and I'm inspired by my daughter. And
So if for the actual website itself, so it's helping parents with young kids, is it more like some hacks or tips, or is it something having to do with work? What is it about?
well, it's just starting, so I will build it over time. So it's about, yeah, more tips to travel without being
Mhm.
over stressed out.
Travel is its own niche with
So,
traveling with
yeah,
kids, right?
yeah, traveling is something, yeah, interesting. So sharing tips about that, about food, about sleep, about activities, maybe. Also recommendation about product that I'm using and that we bought with my wife, things like that, and
Yeah,
experiences
no, it's
I
smart
had.
because you're very much like a curator and creator of resources like I am. So it's very natural that the things that you're involved with at any given time, you want to be able to share with other people. That's
And
amazing. And then I know there's
I
something
want,
else about you. I know it says you have a black belt. And
oh, this, yeah, in Kung Fu,
can you
I
tell
have a
us can you
point.
tell us a little bit more about that? Because this is just building an entire picture here of really cool stuff. Music, science, writing, kids,
Yeah,
having a black belt. That's not very common for most people to say.
yeah, that's funny actually, because I always enjoyed having physical activities since
Mhm.
child. So I love sports and, well, not watching sport, but doing sports. I
Yeah.
usually hate watching sports for some reason. I prefer doing
And
things.
and habit. Yeah, there's people who it's like they just wanna be in the action. It's like, why am I
Exactly.
watching the
Yeah.
action if I wanna be
Yeah.
in the action? And vice versa, right?
So I've been doing dance, some kind of dance for years when I was child and teenager. And at some point, I think I got a bit bored about that. And I
Hmm.
discovered Kung Fu, which some part of it looks like a dance. You have a kind of
Right.
choreography with movements, even if there is different defense and everything. Yeah, it's martial arts, so it's a bit less gentle, let's say, than dance.
You're not
um,
doing like a dance battle with somebody else.
but there is some commonalities in aesthetic. And well, one of my beliefs is that if you practice Kung Fu as you would do dancing, with the same dedication to master the gesture or the movements with a certain grace, your kung fu will be more efficient and more powerful. So it's not, well, there is, yeah, some common ground, I would say. So I started to do some kung fu to learn a few basics, but I stopped for my studies and everything. And I start over and I've practiced for about 10 years and finally got my black belt. So it was quite fun, which is just a beginning. I'm really a beginner in Kung Fu, and belt means that you have some basis. Now you can start to work and learn for
Wow.
real.
Yeah. You're finally accepted into the
Exactly.
realm, and now you're
It's
yeah.
like in science, once you've got your PhD, okay, now we can talk to you and or
Now you're
more.
in the
Before,
room, right?
yeah, we don't really care about you. It's quite similar in a way. So quite
Yeah.
funny.
And I could imagine
Um,
a lot of these spaces end up becoming very parallel. I'm sure you're using a lot of things that you use in your work or you're using in your parenting or you're using from Kung Fu and taking that sort of philosophy and weaving it
yeah,
through everything that you're doing.
exactly. Yeah, totally. It's very interesting to see how you can find analogies between activities that seem very different. And in the end, there are big principles, a bit like the laws of physics of the universe, that how there,
Mhm.
whatever activity you start, and that's something, yeah, that is very interesting for me. I mean, I think I was born a scientist, so there is something about that. Finding
Yeah,
the
I mean,
underlying principles behind anything, music, being a parent,
Mhm.
doing kung fu, and yeah. So that's probably that's
there's a certain perspective that comes with that too that you have. I don't know if this is true necessarily for you, but probably even in the way that you approach your creativity, there's probably a bit of a science to the way that you maybe approach it? Would that be fair to say? Or is just because of the
yeah.
kind of some of the process you go through, or is that do you separate and do something totally pull one side of the brain versus the other? I'm just curious because some people I feel like it's a meld and sometimes it's almost a compartmentalization.
It's a bit separate, but not that much in my case, because there are different types of scientists.
Mm.
I think I'm more a creative. Well, we are all creatives to some point, but
Right.
I'm less analytical than other scientists. I'm more working in analogies and using even my
Mhm.
feelings to, which is a
Mm.
bit counterintuitive, but that it works for me.
Yeah.
I yeah. So I'm more working, let's say, as an artist in science in a way.
Well, that makes a whole lot of sense because I think there's a lot of spaces where you can do that and where it is almost celebrated too, like being a creative in the tech space or, and by creative meaning kind of an artist in the tech space, right?
Yeah.
Or bringing a lot of these kind of maybe not so structural components there, or bringing those into an artistic space. If you
Mm,
are working in music or you're working in, I used to work in the music industry too sometimes having people who are more tech oriented or able to put systems in, like creative systems in for people who are working on new albums, it really brought a different and a very needed perspective in that space. But I think sometimes a
yeah.
lot of people are afraid they're like, okay, I'm left brain, I'm right brain, and they start to go off in that direction to double down when really it's, oh, you should play on the other side a little bit and have some fun.
Yeah, I think I'm using both. I'm not sure. I try not to put any labels always also, but it's a bit limiting. But then, yeah, I've got some tendency I can compare to, for science, for instance, I can compare with my wife, for instance, which is very analytical, very different compared to me. I think she paints, and somehow she's more scientist when she paints that I'm scientist when I'm doing science, if it makes sense.
No, I can totally imagine
Something like
it. So
that.
the way that she
Um,
approaches her creativity and her art
yeah,
is
it's
with a certain eye and a certain process
exactly more
that's probably
analytic,
very
analytical.
structured.
Mm.
So
Um,
I'm curious, like how does you were saying you bring a lot of the feelings and you're thinking outside the box and using analogies. So are you using that in the writing as you write about these particular subjects? How are you infusing that in? I'm just curious because usually from when you're thinking of a scientific perspective, you can imagine that there is that, but from I'm just interested just in the sense of I'm sure there's people who are out there who are like, I would I love science. I want to get involved in it, but I'm more of a touchy-feely, more emotional, more creative human, but I still love that. So how do you incorporate that in or how have you incorporated that in over the years in your work
um,
or
yeah, it's more in problem solving, and also in the way I perceive the data, because I'm collecting some data and
Mhm.
images. Then I'm doing a lot of microscopy, so I see things, and so I spend a lot of time looking, and how it's difficult to explain. I'm using intuition, a lot of intuition,
Mm,
to
yeah.
drive my decisions. And analogies with different fields, because I've got these different cultures at the same time. So I use that to guide my decisions and how I will investigate certain
Mhm.
question and how I will solve the program as well. Try to think about specific example. It's really natural for me, so it's a bit difficult to really deconstruct it.
Well, and that's true when you actually in probably many fields, a lot of times the things that are most natural too, it's sometimes hard to explain because it's just a way of being as opposed to
Yeah,
an example that you can give, but
yeah. For some things, it's very difficult, even for very practical things. Let's say I'm using
Mhm.
sampling instruments, which is a bit complex to use or to tune. You have to tune very precisely and everything. I have a kind of natural feeling of how I should tune it.
Mhm.
Of course, I do also systematic things, but I'm exploring. Let's say I'm exploring the space of solutions
Yeah.
using this more creative, artistic mind,
Right.
and to get a kind of intuitive understanding of it. It won't be very deep in terms of technical details, but
Right.
it's like I can feel these
It's so yeah, you can
instruments
feel almost the shape of it in a way, right?
exactly, and I almost well, it's not like that, but it almost if I could communicate directly with it and
Mhm.
know how to make it work as I want without
Yeah.
knowing all the details. And yeah, it's a bit difficult to explain more than that.
It's almost like playing an instrument, right? In a way, it's like
Yeah,
there's the aspect of understanding the technical pieces, but then there's so much intuition and being able to connect with the instrument itself and be able to manipulate it in a way and, you
that's a
know
very good example. Especially when I play the guitar, I don't even know what scale I'm using, which note I'm playing. I know what I'm
Right.
playing. I know it sounds right and everything, but I
Mhm.
don't really bother in which note I'm playing. I'm improvising a lot, and I'm playing, yeah, with my heart, with my feelings.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a different approach.
Yeah. So how do you what is your intuition feel like? I know sometimes I know you've explained it, you're almost feeling the shape of something, making that sort of connection that's there and taking those underlying systems and almost putting them they're there, but they're almost like in the back burner. You're just more feeling something out and problem solving in a space that's maybe a little less quote unquote analytical or technical. But how do you define intuition? Because I do think that is something that's really interesting to like this is a really interesting point to bring up, especially for people who go between creative and technical. The intuitive part a lot of times will lead with the kind of underlying systems that are there. How do you define, or how does intuition show up for you? Maybe
Yeah,
it can even be in a different space.
that's a good question. And I asked myself this question for a long time. And finally, I see intuition as something quite simple in the end. It's just a sum of all you absorb from what you're reading, seeing, watching, thinking, discussing
Mhm.
with people. And you've got all this information which is stored somewhere.
Mhm.
And when you want to solve a problem, you still have all these different dots that are connected more or less. And then you connect them in a different way for this particular
Mhm.
program. It's not very conscious. So that's why I think we see intuition as something magical, because it, it seems that things just happen like that. It's like creativity. It's just if it's coming from out of nowhere, but I don't think it's the case. It's because we have all this knowledge, all these experiences already in us. And that's also why it's so unique to each person,
Right.
because we all live and we perceive things in different way, and we combine all these things with our own filters, the way we react our emotions, and that
Mhm.
makes this particular mix, and that is our own personality, on creativity. So I think intuition is mostly that once you gathered all this information, all these concepts, this understanding of how the world works and how, yeah, things, well, at least in your view, of course, it's a bit subjective. And this just works by itself, and you come up with these new ideas of this new perspective, which is not that new. It appears new, but it's
Mhm.
a combination. Well, it's my idea. I'm not sure it's true, but it's a unique combination of pre-existing concepts, knowledge that you have, which
Mhm.
is created at this particular point where you are solving this problem or doing this particular thing. So it's very dynamic to me,
Yeah.
even if you can have this static point of data. I'm going a bit
Mhm.
fancy, but there are this different knowledge which can be something very fixed, but the way you combine all these things is very dynamic. Depends on, yeah, the actual question you want to answer and
Well,
what
the
you want.
context, yeah,
Contact, yeah,
it's a back and forth. It's a dance really because you have your unique mix, which is changing all the time, probably from your emotions and what you're solving and your perspective on that at probably any given day, because you may change your there may be little aspects or nuances of your perspective on how you're handling a problem one day versus another based on
mm,
everything else that's going on or something new you've learned. But I would imagine you're always in that flux, and the dynamics of yourself are always changing with your environment and your context too. The analogy of that, where it is like a mix or your own kind of recipe of things that are probably being added to and subtracted from, and like all these things
yeah,
depending on
that's a
kind of
good analogy.
where
I
you've
like.
put it.
Yeah, I like the analogy of a recipe. The ingredients may be the same for different recipes, but the result is very different.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very different in the way
Now,
the
what can, yeah,
recipe, like the ingredients could be sourced differently, right? You could
also,
have slightly different amounts. You could have the water that it was boiled, and a million of different things that it could be, which is so interesting because I honestly think, and maybe you have a perspective on this, I feel like that is a way that with everything going on in tech and AI, like that is a way that we can stand out a little bit more in whatever profession it is, whether you're writing or as things get more advanced. I don't know, and it may be able to because again, there's a certain amount of data points, but we may still have a little bit more fluidity in that way as compared to artificial intelligence because it still has a lot of the same ingredients, but it doesn't have that kind of like as much responsive magic.
let's say if you don't tap into your personality in your experiences,
Mhm.
then yes, maybe an AI will write something which is similar, but even faster and cheaper. So people will go for this solution.
Yeah.
That's quite, yeah, we, that's quite expected. But even if technically, and that's my case, I'm not a good writer. My English is not very good. The structure, I've got a lot to learn. And this coming year, I really want to become as good a writer I can, because I really love that.
Well, by
I'm
the way,
thinking,
I think that you're speaking incredibly well and your
oh,
writing
thank
is
you.
fantastic. So please go. I know you have a Substack, so I'll definitely be linking that here.
Thank
But
you.
I know that you're harder on yourself than we will be. But I
Uh,
understand the sentiment, though.
yeah, I see very good writers and I'm looking up to them. So, but whatever let's say, even your mastery of language, you can still express your own experience. And this
Hmm.
is unique. This is interesting and irreplaceable. You are so precious by who you are, what you lived, what you think, that nobody can replace that. So if you write and you dare, because I know it's not easy. We are yeah, often writers are a bit like introverts, shy and everything. Don't want
Hmm.
to talk too much about ourselves. But from what I've seen in successful writers, and especially with this AI wave that frightens, let's say, more basic writing, I think it's more important than ever to use this personal style, or even if you don't have really a voice. I'm started to dive into that, trying to find my writing voice. I don't have fully, I'm not sure I've got a voice yet. It will probably come over years of writing, and that's fine. But what I can do and what everyone can do is to use your personal experience, your personal opinions. One of the things that I got from just being in the community of writers I mentioned, that you can use AI. For instance, you want to write a blog post, you can use AI for the outline. Usually it's quite good.
Hmm.
You can then use AI to write pieces of it, which
Hmm.
are, let's say, more common knowledge, things that don't have, yeah, any
Or even maybe a couple
originality, that
actionable
anybody
takeaways, things
will
like that.
write mostly the same way. Even like human writers will write something similar. But then the interest is to add your own perspective on top of that. Share anecdotes, yeah, your experiences. And yeah, this is a very safe proof way of writing. And no AI can do that because they don't live, so they can't experience things.
Right. They just come up with random stories. I'm sure they could come up with a
Yeah,
random story, but
they,
it's
they,
not going to
they can
feel the same way
generate,
as a human story.
exactly, they can generate interesting things that can seem real, but they have no conscious, well, at least for now. We'll see in the future, but so they just have access to a huge amount of data of existing
Hmm.
writings, and they can generate fresh writing out of that. But they can't create new data themselves. And
Right.
even if they do that, it won't be in the same context. It won't be in the real world, at least for now. We'll see
Hmm.
later.
It's in a prompted world, right?
Yeah. So it's a bit more, well, rigid in a way. It's more limited than human experience and
Hmm.
much less relatable. And people want to talk to human or to read, to feel connected. For me, writing,
Right.
one of the most interesting parts is to connect two brains,
Yes.
your brain and your reader's brain. And that's so powerful. I love that. If you think about it, when you read something, you are really connected to someone else's mind. Mm. And
You get to really experience their perspective without
yeah,
being them, which is its own way, jumping into someone else's identity. That's why I've been reading a lot more fiction recently too, just to get back into the experience of living like a character as well. I think it's really good for creativity, at least in my perspective, after reading many years of like business books and self-development, which I love. Very,
Yeah, me
very
too.
helpful,
That is,
but maybe not necessarily you're getting in the headspace of in the emotional space maybe of somebody else.
yes. And I think, yeah, emotion is a keyword here. And we can bring this emotion in any type of writing. Well, maybe not financial writing. I'm not sure, but even why not? Yeah. So it's this human connection that people will always need. It's even in terms of biology, let's say it's a necessity for the human species. It's not the case
Mhm,
of all animal species, but we humans are social animals, even if
mhm.
well, don't feel always very social sometimes, and that's my case. But I know that I need that. It's a real need, like eating. You need to be in contact with other humans.
Yeah. This actually leads into I wanted to ask you a little bit more about like I've seen you on Twitter and you're in a creator journey too, and you've been sharing resources. So it's outside of kind of the academic writing. It's more in the like connective writing, as you would say, building that community. So what's been your experience like just being in like the social media space, writing a little differently, building community? How have you approached that? Because I love asking a question because I do think I talk to many people who are in a creator space or just a community building space. So I wanted to know how you came to that and you're like, I want to start sharing some resources here.
For a long time, I wasn't interested in Twitter at all. I think what
Same.
this thing is just like this short piece of text with, yeah, it wasn't very interesting. And I started to use it more actively, maybe 1 year ago, something like that. And it gave me two things. First, in terms of writing, it's very good exercise. It really helps to learn how to structure your ideas in a very concise way because
Mhm,
writing is thinking and communicating. And when
mhm,
you force yourself in expressing an idea in only 280 characters, it really forces you to be very clear yourself with your ideas. And
right.
just having this exercise, it's very powerful. I've seen, uh, I don't can't quantify that, but I think I've improved a lot my
Mhm,
writing and even my thinking in the end. I think more clearly about basically anything now that I've practiced
mhm.
writing tweets. It's something I
Right.
couldn't expect at all. It's very
Yeah,
surprising.
you would think because everybody like they'll hate on Twitter and they'll just say they're like, "Oh, the garbage pile over there." And in my experience personally, I'm watching people and I see their writing get better and better. Their thoughts get clearer and clearer.
Yeah.
Um, it's like your own way of almost journaling in a sense, how you can get those thoughts out and start clarifying and then you're getting feedback on it too. So you're getting that whole feedback loop sometimes of fleshing out an idea, and you get to do that in a
It's,
space where people can actually respond. So I'm
yeah,
sure as a writer, as like a any sort of person who is creating something, writing is the thoughts. So putting it out there and being able to have that community and refining it is so powerful.
it's an idea playground. You can play with
Yes.
others' ideas, you play with your own ideas, you combine them, you
Mhm.
share, and you can connect in a very different way, I think, compared to other social media platforms. It's very
Mhm.
particular. It's really more about connections and ideas than, well, at least the Twitter experience I have compared to other social media platforms. So it has been very interesting journey, even if in terms of metrics, my growth is absolutely negligible. And
Mhm.
well, the last month I've gone, yeah, no increase in followers probably, or very little. But I'm fine with it because at the moment I'm still exploring different ideas in terms of branding. So I'm more in this exploration phase that I may finally came out soon, but I'm still exploring a little bit.
So you're still working on, are you looking into not necessarily rebranding a little bit, but are you looking into exploring some new spaces, or is it just coming back and exploring your voice in a different way? So what do you, because I know there's periods of time and I think that's just seasonal for humans are very seasonal. I
Yeah,
think
that's true.
there's aspects of,
We tend to
there's
overlook
times where
that.
you need to go inward.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's very important points. We tend to overlook that, but yeah, we are seasonal for sure, and with different period of time. Very funny. I see an evolution in my perspective on what I want to build. Over time, I've seen a change. So I don't
Yeah.
know how many times I've changed my Twitter profile, but a lot of times. And especially as someone with multiple interests, trying
Hmm.
to find an overarching theme is
Hmm.
quite an interesting journey in itself. That's why for now I'm in this idea of trying to find for myself and to help others to build a lifestyle of freedom, or in being able to create and build things that you want to build whilst, well, being in a sustainable, financially sustainable way, and having the tools to make it happen. And especially if you have many projects, many
Right.
ideas, how we can make it, make them, or at least part of them, not just ideas but realities. So that's where I'm at now.
So, how do you define building your freedom? Because I think we have a very similar ethos in that space of wanting to make these ideas manifest and do it in a way that is sustainable to the human, right? And to give the resources or to help one another and be a community to be able to build up each other, these like solopreneurs, creatorpreneurs, all of the above, creatives.
I've seen myself over years having all these ideas, all these
Hmm.
projects that I often don't even start, or I start but I just stop. Sometimes because I'm not interested, but sometimes just because I don't have the right systems to
Right.
maintain them, to follow up, and to build something. And what I want to develop, freedom for me is, as you said, to be able to, yeah, to have this geographical mobility is one of them.
Mhm.
But it's more about having the resources to be able also to pivot to different projects as you wish,
Right.
without having any financial problem, which is probably a
Hmm.
big one. So, and also in a more, let's say, inner aspects, to develop this internal freedom to allow myself to pursue new projects without limiting myself, without feeling guilty, because I will spend this time doing this instead of doing something that I feel I need to do, or more personal freedom, say mental freedom, especially, being free of exploring and be okay with that, because, well, it's common thing, but most of the society is not really promoting this kind of way of living. So, I would say a good balance between building things in the long term. So finding the ways to carry on with projects until they become really, they work, instead of just switching to
And being
something
able
else.
to go but seed them and go between them in a way that feels maybe not necessarily more playful, but maybe how you were explaining before with your intuition, having those systems already in place and knowing that you feel the pull to go toward one versus another and work on this versus that because you get to, because the context is correct for it. The worst for me is I see something and I see a context change, like in the environment of the world or something online or an interaction with someone and not feeling like I can, I don't want to say pivot, but just be able to have that freedom to go back and forth and work on this or work on that based on the information that I'm getting.
And that's why I'm quite big on systems lately, trying to develop systems and to create them, because that's the way you can support your ideas, your projects. When the context changes, then when your motivation change also, or your
Hmm.
emotions are a bit in the way. If you've got the right systems, you will be able to continue and they will support you. Systems can be seen as something a bit rigid. And for me, it's the key of building freedom, that setting the right constraints that allow you to be free. I don't know if it makes sense.
You have expressed exactly how I feel. I'm a big systems person. I love it. I love working with tech and automation, all of that, because I feel more creative when I have that support than
Yeah.
when I don't, when I have those constraints than when I don't. And I do think a lot of people do shy away from the idea of systems or operations because it seems technical or not creative, or it's maybe following a different sort of thought pattern, but really it's building a really beautiful foundation for all the creative things that you can build on top of it. I think that's why I'm very passionate about that area, and why I think probably we both love providing resources or tools or practices to our community, because we're like, hey, look at all these cool things that I can share with you. You don't even have to necessarily think about it. You can try it on, see if you like it, put it in your toolbox, and then
Okay.
you do you, you do your thing. You be creative on top of that and see if it works for you, because this worked for me, or this app or this tool was really helpful in my process or this person's process, and maybe it will be for you. Maybe that'll be the thing that'll save you some time so you can write more, you can
So,
play more guitar, or you
yeah.
can start that next business, not wasting your time either overthinking or overdoing in a space you don't need to be in. Have there been any tools or systems that you've put? It doesn't have to be really specific, but is there anything that you've put in place where you feel like, wow, that this is helping my creative process?
Yeah. Well, even just simple organization systems,
Mhm.
setting habits, or just in terms of general productivity, these are the things that can really support your projects, especially when you have multiple ones.
Mhm.
You need some sort of organization. And I really changed a lot in that perspective. I was much more messy for all my life. And I started to develop habits and understand how they work and how I can create new ones and keep them for as long as I want. So now I
Mhm.
know how to do that and it works every time. So that's something I really, that really changed a lot. And yeah,
So
simple
it's
thing.
building kind of those, like, those internal routines so that they become more second nature and you
Exactly.
have these systems built into your day.
Yeah. So using that, you have also, as I said, yeah, it's also a habit, but some productivity habits. So setting your week in advance and defining a certain
Mm.
set of priorities, not too many, trying to find this balance and revising your previous week and having this kind of loop that really helps to, to be more productive. But productive, sometimes it's seen as something very strict and productive also for creative things because it gives
Right.
you
And
more
it's productivity in
space
the
for
sense
that.
of what,
Your
however you want
time.
to define it.
Yeah. Because for instance, let's say we talked about music. If you don't have a certain way of managing your time, or more than your time, I'm shifting from time management to task management and energy management. So if
Mm.
you learn how to do that, you are much more likely to have some time and energy to have a session on your musical instrument, or writing music or whatever you want to do.
Energy management is probably one of my favorite things. Like, it
Yeah.
was one of the first Notion templates I really made for myself, was based on a book called Designing Your Life. And it's by a couple of Stanford professors that were from the design school. And I took something from there and then updated it for myself. And it was really auditing the things in your life that are draining your energy, maybe putting you into a flow state, and just using numerical and data points to to audit your day to day and start designing your life from that perspective and seeing, okay, so sitting on Zoom calls, these are the things that are starting to drain a lot of my energy. Going and playing the piano for a few minutes, that's going to give me that boost that I need to go into that next phase of whatever.
Yeah.
And starting to come up and curious with energy management as opposed to just time. Because I know for me, there are things where I could be doing something could take 5 minutes and completely drain my mental energy because of the interaction that it is, or
Yeah.
something could just an investment of 30 minutes and going and doing some exercise, something like that could completely change the course of my day because it's given me that energy back that I so desperately needed. And then finding those places where, oh my gosh, I walk out after a call with somebody or a podcast recording. I walk out and I feel like I'm buzzing with energy because I love the conversation. But at the same time, it's something where it's quote unquote productive or project. So in a way, you have a really interesting basis on how to maybe evaluate some of your ideas or some of your process or your systems based on how you're feeling, your energy management in that.
Yeah, I think it's super, super important, and it's a foundation of everything. If you don't have the right energy, you won't be able
Mm.
to really do what you want to do.
Right
And
energy is also, 'cause you can have a lot of energy that's not the correct energy
yeah,
for the situation, I'm sure too.
um,
There's something about you can tell, I'm sure, and this is another thing that kind of maybe separates us a little bit from AI and tech too, is you can feel the energy of someone's writing and their thoughts and the space they're in, and you can tell when someone's just going through the motions sometimes too.
yeah,
You can pick up on that. We're interesting in that way that we like little subtle pieces of language we can start to feel or we can start to feel that even though AI has gotten a lot better, there are some times where you can feel that there's not as much maybe soul in there when it's a totally AI generated piece of content.
yeah, because I was talking about connection between
Mhm.
minds, but it's also an emotional connection. It's more
Mhm.
than just ideas, connection also in other planes like emotions. And it's something very subtle that doesn't always, sometimes it's explicit in the words you use, but sometimes it's, I don't know, in the flow of your writing, or it's something you feel as a human, but it's not
Mhm.
explicitly expressed. So that's also, yeah, a good difference between a text which is generated by a computer and something which is written by an actual human.
And
And
I'm sure
on,
too the energy of that is we're reading context in a certain way that maybe comes off differently when because it is almost like an ongoing conversation, even if it's on Twitter. There's all these things always going on, and then there's like the world that's happening, and then there's your contribution at any given point. So it's like this combination of how you're feeling, how you're writing, and then even when you literally click publish, it within probably a couple of minutes, there's different energy, kind of energetic changes that happen through the platform. And like when you're doing it, that we just end up
exactly.
picking up on because it's like in our nature
Yeah.
to
y-
see that societal connection.
You will totally write different tweets depending on your emotions, the energy you feel, the context. So that's totally true. And there are different types of energy. And I was thinking about it, and I, well, it's a bit arbitrary, but I was discerning three big types of energy, which is intellectual energy, mental energy, let's say,
Mhm.
emotional energy, and physical energy. And I think
Mhm.
it's interesting to be aware of how your, what is your, let's say, think of different buckets of energy, uh,
Yeah.
how filled is each bucket, and how fast it drains. In my case, for
Mm.
instance, let's say intellectual energy is high and it doesn't drain easily, and it stays high for the time. It's very, it's on most of the time. My physical
Mhm.
energy is, let's say, average. I not very high, not very low. But I
Yeah.
know that my emotional energy can be drained super fast. So I know that. And sometimes before I even start a new activity, I know that I have to take care of that first.
Right.
Because even if my intellectual energy is very high and everything, if my emotional energy is too low, this will impact the overall energies. It's
It'll color them too, because
also,
where is the intellectual energy going? Because it can go to a place that's very positive, solution oriented, or it can go to a very anxious place too, I'm sure.
exactly.
If you are low emotional energy or you feel drained or frustrated, and then you go into a space where you have high intellectual and maybe high
Mm,
physical energy, you're going into almost, you can go into a tailspin because
no,
you don't have that
right.
kind of grounding there to say, "Whew, okay, I feel a little bit more filled up," or like for me, like when that happens, I sometimes have to just go and make something playful
Yeah,
because for me, that's how I can get or play with the baby or do something where,
yeah. To
it can come
recharge
back up
you.
because
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's that recharge because yeah, it's definitely not like scrolling on social media. That's probably not gonna
No,
be
usually, yeah,
sometimes it's not gonna be as helpful.
yeah. But yeah, it's totally true. It's a very good point because your, let's say, intellectual energy can be very high, so you are able to focus very intensely on something. But it can be something which is the anxiety, or it can be something more productive, or and this will depend on
Right.
your energy. So that's why, yeah, that's a very good point. And taking care of recharging this energy well, before is very important. And sometimes it's very quick, as you said, just doing something playful. And I was listening to a workshop by Emily Wardwick about productivity, and she mentioned something very interesting that I haven't tried yet. I think I do it naturally. Is to in your day to allow yourself to have a certain time to explore. But
Mm.
something you really
Mhm.
even schedule if you need to say, okay, for half an hour, I'm exploring. I'm allowing myself to just explore. And this
Right.
usually, at least for me, it's the case, but maybe it's the case also for many people. It's something that's recharged me because it's playful, as you said. I'm
Mhm.
throwing ideas and looking very different things at the
There's
same
no,
time. Yeah,
set goal.
very
Yeah,
randomly,
there's no
but
set goal.
and say, I don't know, I want to know how I could design a dress because that's something I'm interested in. I try to look at that and then I will switch. Oh, but how do you cook this particular recipe? And so having this time where you are totally free to explore, I think during your day, at some point, your day is probably a good way also to keep your energy, emotional energy, probably more than
Mhm.
other type of energy, but at a good level. And also just, yeah, feel free also. We talk about this freedom. It's a part of freedom which is very important, and it can be in your daily life, even if it's just a few minutes. The fact that you acknowledge that you have the right of doing this, you're free to explore. That's something I think, yeah, quite important.
So really building your freedom is in your everyday, and it's experiencing pieces of that every day
Yeah,
in your own way.
exactly. My perspective is that as much as you can, you want to build the life you want today.
Mm.
To a certain extent, of course, you can't do anything, but you can already tweak a few things to slightly, gradually make it the life, your dream life, let's say.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
there is no reason to wait something particular to happen because then you will rely on external things. Whereas you can work on that by yourself every day and incorporate a few things to make it closer to your dream life, allowing yourself, for instance, to explore whatever things you want for a few minutes or even 1 hour if you can. Going for a walk every day, if it's usually it's something quite healthy, even for your mind, it means that you're already creating your own life. You are in charge and you don't wait on something that may happen. And I hope it will happen for you, but may not. We can't predict what will be the future, but we can control what we are doing every day. And for me, yeah, that's the spirit behind this kind of philosophy of building your freedom. It's very active and it's daily that you want to build your financial, creative, and mental freedom. That's, yeah, usually the three aspects I'm listing, but it's, well, yeah, globally, let's say your life you want.
Well, and
Life
it's
you want.
the funny enough, I was gonna ask, I'd ask every guest this, how would you define everyday innovation? I feel like in a way you've already started to answer that kind of from your own philosophy of that the way that you build and grow is really through building that freedom.
So the first part is related to what we discussed about intuition. For me, innovation is usually more creating a new mix of old things. So it's not new in a
Mm-hmm.
way that it's something that every component will be new, but the particular combination will be new itself. And this is very unique because of your own experience and your own knowledge. And so this is one aspect. And so you will address problems with this particular mix, which is your own, yeah, perspective and knowledge. So this is, yeah, one aspect. And the other aspect is to see that as an iterative process. I practice that in my scientific activity. I've got the first idea and I really try it on that every day. And it will nourished by other ideas that I cross together. I may at some point have different branches where I can go and I will try one. Maybe it's not really what I think is the best and try another one. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
experimentation.
Yeah.
Life in the end is just a sum of experiences. Sometimes we are a bit afraid of experimenting more, but I think we should experiment more.
Yeah.
Even more but what we do. And because that's a way to find new solutions. If you explore, if you experiment by doing things and not just playing with ideas, which of course is important, but you also have to do things to get feedback. So then you can
Right.
iterate according to this feedback because it gives you more data that you can use to innovate.
You're right up my alley in the sense of being able to speak about the scientific perspective and the cross-pollinating all of these aspects of life and building your freedom. But I wanted to ask because again, this is a an open form of place where we're speaking, but I want people to be invited to respond to us. But I wanted to know if there's anything that you would pose as a question to.
I guess it really depends on people, but I'm curious to know what are the obstacles people have to build the life they want. And if there are mostly internal obstacles related to mindsets or limitations that they have in beliefs of these things like that, or external, more like
Mm.
productivity systems or things like that. I'm interested in both.
It's still a great question because I think it's not probably asked enough. We talk a lot about the solutions for, but maybe we aren't asking enough. What are the actual obstacles, especially internal obstacles, I think too. We often focus on, well, I don't have this system yet, or I don't have this, but then it takes some deeper work to say, oh, I'm experiencing some imposter syndrome, or I'm have this
Yeah.
creative block here. And I don't know why. I wonder where that's coming from. Probably not coming from necessarily be coming from my system, but it might be an internal system that's needing some,
Yeah, because we need
some
both, but
TLC.
sometimes, yeah, I think it's good to know which one is maybe the most limiting at the moment.
And start there, yeah, 'cause again, you can always address everything, but you can do one at a time when you're right.
For instance, I was talking about habits. Once I started to be able to build new habits and keep them, it helped me also to overcome certain mental limitations
Mm.
and vice versa. So it's quite interesting as an interplay. I'd like to help people with both. I'm very curious to know, yeah, what specifically is blocking people in their journey to live their best life. Essentially, that's what I would dream to be able is to help as many people as I can to live the best life, because it's a fantastic experience. We just have this unique chance to live it.
I love that. So where can people find you? So let's say they do want to, they have that question, they pose it, and they want to see what's coming next. Is the best place your Twitter? I know you have a Substack as well. Of course, I'll be linking all of this, but I always like to
Yeah,
ask just because in a certain moment, people might be like, hey, just send me an email. And you never know.
Twitter would be a good place, or by email. So it's frank@frankelda.com. It's quite simple.
Wonderful.